Hey everybody, based on recent videos I watched about narcissism and all cluster B personality disorders, uh, which is histrionic, narcissistic borderline, and antisocial personality disorder being what we also call psychopathy. This is of course the DSM-5 kind of system to classify the cluster B, the dramatic erratic cluster. Um, and I think Machiavellian traits are also part of it, but doesn't matter now because it's not a clinical, you know, diagnosis. Machiavellian is not clinical. Like there's so many misunderstandings, and I'm not the person who understands everything about it, but the basic level of misunderstanding is what triggered me to make this video. When we talk about Machiavellianism is not clinical, um, we need to understand that also dark dryad personalities or dark tetrad personalities are also subclinical, so they can't be diagnosed because their traits are kind of mixed and also might not be strong enough in order to make this diagnosis. Talking about diagnosis is absolutely useless anyway and kind of contributes to the confusion. And I want to get to reduce the confusion. And also, I want to share and wrap up my understanding of all of this. So, I'm not talking about diagnosis here, but about personality traits in general. And I want to make it in a way that is relatable and understandable simply. Um, so, depending on the system that we use, whether it's the DSM-5 or then there's also the IDC, and I don't know, there's many ways, and each system that you use will change the results. And at the end of the day, every human being is unique, and it naturally always creates problems with you know understanding what is truly the individual in front of you is always an individual. And most cluster B personality disorders, by the way, are coming as comorbidities and also shapeshift. So it's not a static thing. So if we think about borderliners or narcissists, they always have kind of a magical connection to psychopathy, so they can switch states under stress and even change completely from one to the other. So I just want to go to simplify all of this and speak about the main misunderstandings. Um, for me, let's start with the misunderstandings. The biggest misunderstandings are about narcissism. And I share the opinion of Professor Sam Vaknin here that the only true narcissism that makes sense to speak of is covert narcissism, and that is narcissism. That what we call falsely narcissism is actually antisocial personality disorder, or also known as type 1 psychopath. It's overt narcissism is overt narcissism is the same as antisocial personality disorder, psychopathy, and it's not narcissism actually. Covert narcissism, that what we call collapsed narcissism is narcissism actually. Um, and many people who speak of narcissists actually therefore mean that what I call psychopath, all right, or they want to when they say narcissist, they mean overt narcissist, but in my opinion, it does not make sense to speak of it. I would describe this as antisocial personality disorder. Why? Because psychopath and overt narcissist are basically the same. They are stable. They arguably have functioning reality testing, right? Um, and it's almost in today's society, unfortunately, a functional adaptation to the system and situation that we're living in. We're living in capitalism combined with consumerism, and narrative control, narration is more important than authenticity. Um, Performance based on like an actor, like a show Hollywood actor, this form of performance is more important than the real performance behind this facade. And this is a world where uh, overt narcissists like psychopath, antisocial, these traits are rewarded. All right, this is um, what is a good adaptation to the system, being selfish and hiding behind a facade and having the narrative control and weaponizing victimhood narratives and all of this. There's so many opportunities to hide behind narratives, behind political correct movements, and at the same time not really coming from a place of authenticity and taking over true accountability and responsibility for one's own actions. All right. So I wanted to start with the confusion about all of this, right? With um, people saying narcissist and meaning actually what is a psychopath. This body language, by the way, covering the sternum means that I want to cover my vulnerability, right? It's a very vulnerable area here. And it is because I just got a little bit insecure about what I want to say at all. All right. So there's probably other misconceptions as well, like um, I want to put it again as a way that Professor Sam Vaknin says, and it's really about clinicians. Clinicians can try to separate borderline from narcissism and psychopathy from borderline and narcissism to distinguish this, but they are all really um, very overlapping and bleeding into each other, hard to separate from each other. Um, I think recently Professor Sam Vaknin said something like, kind of the apex predator is the psychopath, the overt narcissist. It's the same. Type 1 psychopath. They are the apex predator. They are on top of the food chain. And so every cluster B personality disorder is a person that, there could be a genetic disposition for it, but it's also trauma in childhood mirroring. What did the parents mirror to the child? How was, form of child abuse is also spoiling the child by mirroring it in a like conditional way, conditional love, um, as well as straight neglect or forms of overt abuse. All of this can spoil the child and bring forth these traits, and they are kind of a trauma response leading to what we call a false self. Is a defense mechanism that in childhood is actually a very functional and protective method for the child and necessary for the child to survive. But when the child grows up and gets adult, it leads to many forms of dysfunction in uh, behavior, social behavior, um, relationship choices, and all of this. And again, on the top of the food chain of these predatory, persuasive, parasitic personalities, as we could also call them, is the psychopath, which is also the same as the overt narcissist. For everyday use, it does not make sense to distinguish them. This is a functioning person with superficial charm, reality testing, highly goal oriented, has so many sources of extracting narcissistic supply, safety, services, sex, attention, and whatnot. So highly goal oriented. Um, that they can make themselves believe that they are not dependent of other people. So they are dependent of these sources, but they have so many that it looks like they're independent of it. And yeah, it's again in our society basically rewarded sets of traits. They have impulse control. They know how to use the system better than anyone else. They know how to manipulate symbols. Language is a symbol. The law system is consists out of symbols. Political correctness and incorrectness, narratives are symbols. And these people are masters at manipulating symbols and even can change their own personality and facade that they present on the fly and in everyday life. They can just shapeshift because they have no authentic self that is consistent and historic, but they are reaction creating machines. They study you and they feel every small change in reaction that you have. They can idealize you and they can devalue you and they can make you doubt yourself. They can make you um, emotionally unsettled and all of this to get the outcome they want, to extract the goal. So this is my definition of the of this predatory personality, right? Psychopath narcissists, the number one. And when they collapse, when they fail to extract these goals, the personality structure is kind of collapsing into what we call covert narcissist. All right, so they can collapse into covert narcissism, and then the person gets more immersed into a fantasy. Reality testing does not work as good anymore. They need to refer to fantastic narratives in order to under to keep up their grandiosity, because the psychopath and the narcissist are grandiose, but they have some real successes and connections to reality to underline their grandiosity. The grandiosity gap is not that big, but for the kind of collapsed narcissist, they have to rely on fantasy in order to fuel the same sense of superiority and entitlement as their predatory, apex predatory idols, the psychopath and the overt narcissist. So they need to refer more to fantasy, and this is why they lose kind of touch with reality. All right, they lose it more, and they're more weirdos, rather also passive aggression, rather passive aggressive, and very uncanny, because they don't interact with you as a human being. They interact with a fantastic representation of what you are in their mind. They do not interact with reality. They don't see you as an agent equal and similar to them within a shared reality. They immerse you in their shared fantasy as some as an inanimate object, and it frustrates them if you do not um, align with their fantasy of who you are, and they will keep trying to coerce you, to unalive you, to kind of uh, become more aligned with their fantasy of who you are. Um, and even if the covert narcissist fails, a failed covert narcissist is a borderliner. It's a person that is even more dysregulated, probably. Um, you know, but it's also very similar. So covert narcissism, borderline is quite probably very similar, and also very similar to type 2 psychopath. All of them have less impulse control. All of them have a very pronounced victimhood mentality. Um, all of them have these fantastic narrations of them being rescuers and fixers and healers. Um, and messianic figures, all of this fantastic delusional thinking, magical thinking. Um, Yeah, so this is basically how I see it. Okay, so we have the group that we can all summarize as the same thing: functioning, stable, predatory, psychopath, overt narcissist. And then in the middle ground, you have the covert narcissist. They can present themselves as very benevolent pillars of the community, do gooders, um, it's the communal narcissist could be something like that. People who really, they might even believe what they say about themselves, about their who they are and what they do. It's all good, you know. But the outcomes and the relations around them tell a different story, but they really believe it, probably. It's all self-deception, a false self. That's the definition of a false self. What all of them share is um, to make it's a self-delusion. It's to make oneself believe it, and if they can believe it, they have to make others believe it. And when the others believe it and mirror back this sensation, that they kind of take this superficial acting of what the person believes to be the identity, then they can believe it. But this is why it has to be fueled all the time, because it's not an ongoing thing that is like, I know who I am. I have this identity and nobody can take it away and I don't have to prove it. No, it's a constant thing that has constant being reinforced, right? All right. So again, I'll try to wrap it up now quickly and straight. We have this the stable, functioning, charming psychopath and overt grandiose narcissist, and then we have in the middle ground the covert narcissist, who can be one of these ostentatious do-gooders, you see, and then we have the most labile side, which is the borderline, the type 2 psychopath. Yeah, and yeah, and this is a very simple way to see it. It's just three things. It's based on self-efficacy, functioning, reality testing. Um, but it shows that there's not this historic identity, an ongoing identity core that stays the same, that has principles, that has a morality core that is consistent over decades, and is slowly changing. But the core is not really changing. The person is going through transformations, maybe, but it still is the same core is there. These are rather shapeshifters. These are people who swaying their identity with whatever is needed. It's a facade, it's a false self. But they have to make you believe so they can believe, all right? So I hope I contributed rather to some clarity, instead of creating more confusion about it. And we again have to understand that truly fully fledged personality disorders are rather very rare. There might be, at, if we talk about cluster B, maybe 2% of the whole population is fully diagnosable, fully fledged cluster B. But the traits are really, maybe dark tetrad personalities might be like, maybe 10%, I don't know, 8%, I don't know. And it helps, it has such a strong explanatory power. If you hit a relation, if you have experiences that make absolutely no sense, the explanatory power of understanding narcissism, psychopathy, borderline, etc., just provides you with a way to understand counterintuitive and strange behavior around you. And it explains both what can happen globally, um, but also what can happen in your personal life. And narcissistic traits are something absolutely human. Every human being has narcissistic traits. They are necessary for self assertion, for exploring the world, for self love, for relating to other people. But when they are going, kind of, I don't know what word to use, metastasize, when this development of childhood is impaired, disrupted, it can go crazy. It can pathologize, and that is when we get the the dominating organizing principle of the personality being narcissism. That's when it makes problems. So it needs to be integrated, it needs to be cultivated, and the phase is, by the way, is separation, individuation from the mother, and it is a very important phase, and needs to be integrated in the personality and not dominate the personality, right? So that's my contribution to this topic. I will underline it with a more structured text that I will create soon, and I may later add it into the description below in the video. Until then, see you in the next video.